All right, I'm going to get into this Jamar Chase analysis because I feel like a lot of people are bagging on him, but at the same time, I feel like the man is kind of doing it to himself. But I'm going to remain very objective in this analysis. Now, before we get to the content, I'm going to be announcing a giveaway winner for a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series X next week to a subscriber that turns on my notifications on this channel. And if you've already done it, you are already entered. On top of that, just make sure you leave a like on this video. It really helps the channel out a lot. And check us out on Instagram and Twitter. Now that we got all that out of the way, break! Personally, I love fantasy football, but unfortunately, when you make like 5 videos a day the way I do, you don't really have time to be a part of as many fantasy football leagues as I would like to be a part of, and I don't have enough time to set up lineups and focus on the waiver wire and just stress myself out each and every week with all the details. Thankfully, there is a fantasy football league that allows me to just go based off of my fantasy football brilliance and not so much on my ability to stay up till 3 in the morning placing waiver wire claims. And it's called Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy also has this great $1 million tournament that you get a free entry to, so you could try it out. The way it works is you go ahead and you draft your team in the very beginning, and Underdog Fantasy calculates your score based off of the best players that scored for you that week, which means there's no players that are going to be left on your bench, which means if Odell Beckham Jr. goes off for 40 points one week, you're not going to accidentally leave him on your bench because he'll automatically be part of your starting lineup. Your best players are automatically in, the players that stink stay on the bench, and honestly, I think it's a way better way of playing fantasy football. So you can check it out by using my link in the description down below, and if you use my promo code, you get a free $25 to try it out. And thank you, Underdog Fantasy, for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? So if you guys remember, a couple of weeks ago I made a video on Jamar Chase's preseason problems during his early games with the Cincinnati Bengals, and I mentioned multiple times that although this is kind of troubling, it should be taken with a grain of salt. Well, he came out today and he said something that, I don't know, personally rubbed me the wrong way, maybe rubbed some Bengals fans the wrong way, but we're gonna dive into this analysis and you can tell me what you think, because Jamar Chase entered the NFL draft as one of the most exciting wide receiver prospects that we've seen in quite some time. The way I compared him is a player that had the physicality of Des Bryant, an extremely innovative wide receiver that can also improvise on the fly, a player that coming out of the NFL draft, one of his biggest strengths was the fact that he was a quote-unquote ball magnet with sticky hands. As a matter of fact, when you look at this entire draft profile, there is not a single weakness from the NFL scouts that state that Jamar Chase was going to have trouble catching the football. As a matter of fact, it was considered to be a huge strength of his as opposed to a potential weakness. His weaknesses mainly were the fact that he had very basic route trees, which with all due respect, and this isn't to roast any of the top wide receivers in the NFL, but there are players that have succeeded in the NFL with the most basic of route trees. For example, you look at Michael Thomas and how we all make fun of him for being a slant and out route master. DK Metcalf is literally the king of the go route, which is a very simple route, but is still terrifying considering how DK Metcalf is one of the most physical players that we've ever seen since Calvin Johnson. What I'm trying to say is that's not really that bad of a weakness. What's bad is Jamar Chase has been struggling to catch the football, and we saw it in his many drops in the preseason. He began getting memed, and some people are even comparing the guy to John Ross, and obviously there have been some concerns considering the fact that Jamar Chase at this point, the number 5 overall pick in the NFL draft, despite the Cincinnati Bengals having players like Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins on the roster, has currently dropped all the way down to wide receiver number 4 on the depth chart. Now, this is terrifying considering how he's the number 5 pick in the NFL draft, and considering how the big question at the time was whether or not the Cincinnati Bengals were going to select Jamar Chase or Penei Sewell. And ultimately, the reason why they went towards Jamar Chase was because him and Joe Joe Burrow had a great connection dating all the way back to their days in LSU. And I could understand that connection. I could understand the camaraderie between the two of them, especially if you win a championship together when you weren't necessarily expected to. Obviously, you probably think you could take over the world and you probably want to take on the next level together. And we've seen things like this in the past. Obviously, Andrew Luck didn't have the greatest success at Stanford, but he did play a huge hand alongside with Jim Harbaugh in turning that entire program around. So as a result, when the Colts drafted Andrew Luck with the #1 overall pick, in the second round, they drafted his go-to tight end, Coby Fleener. And honestly, we all thought that was a great safety blanket for him, just to make him a little bit more comfortable in the NFL. But ultimately, it wasn't a connection that was really made in the NFL. Andrew Luck favored targets like T.Y. Hilton and Reggie Wayne. Although Coby Fleener did have some good years with Andrew Luck, it wasn't necessarily a long-lasting partnership. And this is a theme that we saw a lot in the NFL draft, at least this year. You saw the Philadelphia Eagles draft Devontae Smith and reunite him with Jalen Hurts. Those two had a background together in Alabama. You saw the Miami Dolphins draft Jalen Waddle with the #6 pick in the NFL draft after moving back and forth in the entire NFL draft multiple times and reuniting him with Tua Tagovailoa, who had a relationship with him during their days in Alabama. So at the same time, it makes a lot of sense to get Joe Burrow, a player that would make him much more confident and comfortable in the NFL. But at the same time, there was a potential franchise-altering left tackle in Penei Sewell that they could have selected that could have made Joe Burrow's life a little bit easier, at least on the offensive line. But the thing I'm mainly hearing from a lot of people at this point is the fact that Penei Sewell hasn't really emerged as that game-changing, franchise-altering left tackle yet. So I guess you could feel a little bit better about this because it looks like Sewell is really struggling at the right tackle position. At the same time, Sewell and Jamar Chase have something in common in the sense that both of these players didn't play in any football in the past year, although for significantly different reasons. Penei Sewell opted out of the 2028 season as a result of the Pac-12 canceling their season. Jamar Chase, on the other hand, was dealing with a lingering injury, and he didn't want to potentially risk his abilities of getting drafted by playing in a fairly sketchy NCAA season. And as a result, I guess it's fair to say that both of these guys are rusty. I don't really think either of them are a draft bust, but when you hear Jamar Chase's justification as to why there's been so many drops for him so far, at least for me, it kind of irks me. So there's this article that went up earlier today. Jamar Chase was trending as a result of this, and his explanation for his struggles, apparently via Bengals.com, mind you, is quote unquote, "The ball is different because it is bigger. It doesn't have the white stripes on the side, so you can't see the ball coming from the tip point, so you actually have to look for the strings on the ball at the top, which is hard to see because the whole ball is brown and you have to get the 6 strings that are white. But for the most part, I just have to get used to it and find out what I am comfortable with catching." Now, again, it's been more than 600 days since Jamar Chase caught a pass in a real game, but this explanation, with all due respect, is so bizarre to me. I've never heard of an excuse like this in my life. Now, Jamar Chase actually was a little hard on himself, coming out and saying that I don't want to blame it on me sitting on my butt for the whole year, but it probably has something to do with it, of course. There's a bigger ball adjustment, so I don't want to make excuses, but I've just got to be a pro and make the catch. So obviously, I'm really concerned about this, not so much because Jamar Chase is giving excuses, more so because I feel like these issues, and I don't mean to draw basketball parallels because you guys know I also have a basketball channel called The Flight Mike, but I don't mean to draw a basketball parallel, but I personally think things like this are very mental. If you are a stud wide receiver in the NCAA, chances are at least you know how to catch a football. At the very least, you shouldn't have problems with drops. And it's kind of like a free throw in the NBA. Some of the best free throw shooters in the NBA sometimes choke in very big situations because it's very psychological. Now, Jamar Chase told the media that he's been working hard on fixing his hand-eye coordination. According to his coaches, he stays after practice to catch footballs from the jugs machine. It may be a toss-up on if he's caught more footballs than tennis balls during the preseason, and he says it is 5,000 tennis balls that he caught during the preseason. The coach stands behind him in the weight room, throws the tennis ball off the wall, and Chase reacts. And Chase said that he does at least 40 a day, who is putting in some 500 tennis ball days after the 3 drops in Washington. Now, the tennis balls are for hand-eye coordination and eye concentration, but there's another thing that Jamar Chase is blaming his struggles on, saying that he didn't really get into a good rhythm with himself and actually play football. I just had a few times to go out there and learn the fundamentals of the offense. That's how I felt when I was out there playing. I feel like once I get into this game and actually play a longer time, I'll do more of myself. I don't think it's really fair to just say Jamar Chase and Penei Sewell are busts off the bat. They're clearly both just very rusty players and need some time to get acclimated to the NFL. These are two individuals that haven't even taken an official NFL snap yet. They've only played in preseason thus far, so there is reason for concern. But I think in the case of Jamar Chase, there is hope for him, and I do believe that he'll figure it out eventually. Whereas in the case of Penei Sewell, it may take a year or two before he finally gets up to speed. At least if you're a Bengals fan, you could take solace in the fact that I guess both of them are struggling. But let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think about this report. Do you think Jamar Chase is going to be able to rebound, or do you think his reason for not being able to catch footballs is a little bogus? Let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think about all this. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.